The car died at 11:47 p.m., and Mara knew before the dashboard went dark that this was not a coincidence. She'd felt it on the highway, a tremor in the steering column, subtle as a held breath. The kind of thing you notice, and then immediately try to unnotice, because you're 40 minutes from home and you're tired, and the road is empty, and everything is probably fine. Then the engine coughed, then the lights dimmed. Then the silence arrived all at once, thick and absolute, and the car rolled to a stop on a Detroit side street that Mara did not recognize and had never seen on any map. Deon put his hand on hers before she could speak. That was his way. 10 years together, and he still led with his hand. "Okay," he said, which wasn't a question. "'Kay," she answered, which wasn't an answer. Outside, the city did not look like Detroit. Detroit, even at its emptiest, had a presence, a weight of industry and memory pressed into the brick, the smell of the river 2 miles east, the ambient glow of somewhere else bleeding over the rooftops. This street had none of that. The buildings stood, but they did not breathe. The streetlights were on, but the light they gave was the wrong color. Slightly too blue, slightly too cold, the way a photograph of a fire is not warm no matter how well shot. There were no other cars. There were no sounds. There was just the street and the cold, and the two of them sitting inside a car that would not start. "I'll try the doors," Deon said. "Don't," Mara said. He looked at her. "Not yet." She was watching the street through the windshield. Nothing moved. That was the problem. City Street at midnight should move. A cat, a plastic bag, a drunk man's weaving shadow. This street did not move. It was arranged, she thought, like a set. Her phone had no signal. His had no signal. Car's onboard system, the expensive one they'd put $2,400 into 4 months ago, showed a single icon she'd never seen before. A gray circle with a line through the center. Description, no error code, just the symbol pulsing slowly as if breathing. "What is that?" Deon asked. "I don't know." "Is it a satellite thing?" "I don't know, Deon." He was quiet. She heard him exhale through his nose, the way he did when he was working something out and didn't want her to see the work. She loved that about him, and she hated it right now. She tried the engine again. The key turned. The dashboard lit. The gray circle pulsed. The engine did not catch. "All right," she said. She got out of the car. The cold hit her in a way cold didn't usually hit. Not descending on her from above, but rising from below, from the pavement itself, as if the street were pulling heat down through the soles of her shoes. She stood still for a moment, breathing it in, cataloging. The air had a taste. Pollution, not river water, not the iron smell of rain coming. Something she had no word for. Something like copper, and something like ozone, and underneath both of those, faint and sweet and wrong, something almost floral. Deon came around the car and stood beside her. He put his hand on her shoulder, and she felt the warmth of it through her jacket, and she was glad. "That smell," he said. "Yeah. What is that?" "I don't know." They stood there together on the empty street, in the too blue light, and listened to the silence. It was Deon who heard it first. A low subsonic resonance, felt more in the chest than heard with the ear. Like the note a massive bell makes after it's been struck, and the obvious sound has faded. He pressed his palm flat against the car door and felt it vibrating. "Underground," he said. "Something underground." Mara crouched and put her hand to the asphalt. It was warm. The street beneath her was warm in the 40-degree night, and it was humming. She stood up slowly. "We need to move," she said. They moved. They had gone 2 blocks north when the first one appeared. It came from an alley between a boarded laundromat and a collapsed storefront, and for 3 full seconds, Mara's brain refused to process it correctly. It was tall, 7 feet perhaps more, and it moved with a kind of deliberate stillness, the way water moves in a current, each motion inevitable and unhurried. Its surface absorbed the streetlight. It wore no clothes, no armor, nothing she could name. Its body was organized around a bilateral symmetry that was almost human, the way a reflection in moving water is almost exact. Almost. It turned what she assumed was its head and looked at them. She did not know how she knew it was looking at them. It had no eyes she could see. The quality of its attention was unmistakable, precise, analytical, the way a scientist watched a specimen introduced into a new environment. Deon's hand found hers in the dark. "Don't run," she said quietly. "I wasn't going to run." "I know. I was talking to myself." The creature did not move toward them. It stood at the entrance of the alley and observed. Behind it, deeper in the dark, she could see two more. The same height, the same fluid stillness, the same dreadful quality of focused attention. Mara breathed, in through the nose, out through the mouth. She'd learned that at 17, in a waiting room, outside her mother's hospital room, and it had served her in every hard moment since. She breathed now. Okay, she said softly. Okay. They're watching. They've been watching, Deon said, since before we got out of the car. She looked at him. Jaw was set, and his eyes were moving, cataloging the street, the buildings, the angles. He was an electrician. Teen years of walking into unfamiliar junction boxes, unfamiliar problems that would kill you if you touched the wrong wire. He was very good at this particular kind of looking. There, he said. That building. Second floor, the windows are lit. She looked. He was right. In a row of dead dark facades, one building, a narrow 4-story structure that had once been a pharmacy, she could still read the ghost of the sign, had light on the second floor. Warm light, yellow. Human spectrum light. They moved toward it without discussing it. This was also their way. The door to the pharmacy was unlocked. Inside, the ground floor was dark and stripped to concrete. Whatever had been here was gone. Shelves, counters, the old soda fountain she could tell had existed from the tile ghosts on the floor. The stairs were solid, and the second floor landing had light spilling under its door. And when Mara knocked, a woman's voice came back immediately. It's open. Her name was Joan. She was 63, she told them, a retired city building inspector, and she had been here for what she estimated was 11 days. She was the first person to have any information. I've watched 3 other groups, she said. She had given them water from a cistern she'd rigged on the roof, and the 3 of them sat on overturned plastic crates near the window, speaking quietly. 2 couples, 1 family. They came in on the same street you did. Cars dead, same hour. The things. She gestured toward the window. They don't hurt you. Not right away. What do they want? Mara asked. As far as I can work out, they want to see what you do. Joan turned her water bottle in her hands. She had the manner of someone who had already been through every stage of panic and come out the other side into a kind of grim, workmanlike calm. They let you move. They let you eat if you find food. They let you sleep. They watch. Every time someone tries to force something, tries to break out, tries to disable one of their sensors, tries to escalate, they intervene. Not violently, they just stop the action. Like a researcher redirecting a lab animal away from the edge of the platform. A lab animal, Deon said. Shh. That's the frame they're working in. Sure of it. What happened to the other groups? Joan looked at her water bottle. They disappeared. I don't know where. I don't think they're dead. I think they were collected. Cest somehow filed. She looked up. The family. There was a little girl, maybe 8 years old. She figured out one of the sensors. Just by watching it. She sat across the street from it for 2 days and watched it, and then she went up to it, and she did something with her hands. And it went dark. All the sensors on that block went dark. Silence. What did they do? Mara asked. They came for the family within an hour. But not the way they'd come for the others. Different posture. Different approach. I watched from the roof. Joan paused. They were careful with her. More careful than they'd been with anyone. Mara looked at Deon. He was already looking at her. They're testing for something specific, she said. Yes, Joan said. I think they're testing for something they don't have a category for yet. The sensor was on the corner of the next block, a smooth ovoid shape, matte black, roughly the size of a basketball, mounted on what looked like a standard light pole. It had no visible lens, no seam, no obvious mechanism. It simply sat there and watched. And everything in its radius felt watched. Mara stood across the street from it for a long time. Deon stood beside her. He had his hands in his pockets, the way he stood when he was thinking through a problem he hadn't solved yet, but was close to. She knew this posture, the way she knew his breathing. The girl turned it off, she said. By touching it. Joan said she did something with her hands. Right, not just touched it. Did something. Deon was quiet for a moment. You know what I keep thinking about? When I was rewiring that school on Graciote. The old one, and I found that junction box nobody had touched since 1967. Everything was live. Nothing was labeled. Everything was the wrong color, because the standards were different then. He paused. I had to figure out the whole system from first principles. To assume anything. Mara looked at him. How did you do it? I made contact with things very gently, he said. And I paid attention to what happened. They crossed the street. She let him approach it. This was not because she was afraid, though she was afraid. It was because Deon's hands had spent 30 years learning to read the invisible charge in things. And that skill was real and specific, and it mattered now. He stood before the sensor for a long time without touching it. He walked around it slowly. He looked at it from below and from the side. Then he took off his left glove and held his palm 6 inches from its surface, and closed his eyes. Somewhere behind them, at a distance she'd stopped trying to estimate. The creatures watched. It's warm, he said quietly, and it's putting out a field, faint. Probably why the phones don't work. He moved his palm slightly left, then right, then down. Here. The field's different here. Lower frequency. He opened his eyes and looked at her. Feel that? She stepped forward and held her own hand near the spot he indicated. She felt it. A faint resistance, like static, like the moment before a shock. Yes, don't pull back from it. She didn't. She held her hand steady and breathed and felt the field press against her palm. And she thought, this is information. Whatever this is, it's trying to read us. And anything that reads can be read in return. She spread her fingers. The field shifted. She felt it shift. A subtle change in pressure, a change in frequency, as if the device had registered her gesture as a variable and was adjusting its model. She moved her middle finger slightly, just slightly, and it shifted again. Response. Clear, measurable response. It's talking, she said. Yeah, not to us. About us. Yeah, she thought about the 8-year-old girl who had watched and waited and figured it out. She thought about what Joan had said. They were careful with her. More careful than they'd been with anyone. She pressed her palm flat against the sensor. It was warm under her hand, warmer than the air, warmer than the asphalt. She felt the field reorganize around the new contact point, felt it probe and sample. Felt it, and this was the part she could not fully explain later. The part she could only describe as something she knew without knowing how. Felt it encounter the specific texture of a human nervous system and pause. I feel it. What are you doing? She closed her eyes, she breathed. Shh. She thought about her mother in the hospital room, and the breath she'd learned there. She thought about Deon's hand on hers in the dark car. She thought about 14 years of ordinary love. The small frictions, and the wordless understandings, and the 10,000 moments of continuing to choose the same person. She thought about Joan up there on her roof, watching alone for 11 days, building her cistern, doing the work. She thought, whatever you are, you've been looking at us from the outside. She pressed her palm harder against the surface, and she thought, look closer. The sensor went dark. Not the whole block this time, just this one. And it did not go dark the way a power failure goes dark, sudden, inert. It went dark gently, like an eye closing. She took her hand away. Deon was very still beside her. Down the block she could hear the soft concussive sound of the creatures moving. The same subsonic resonance as the street, but faster now, agitated, purposeful. She did not turn to look at them. What did you do? Deon asked. I don't know exactly, she said. I don't think it matters exactly. Mara, I think I just, she searched for the word. I think I just let it see that I wasn't a specimen. The footsteps were close now. She felt Deon step slightly in front of her, the way he always did, the old instinct she'd spent years arguing about, and had quietly stopped arguing about, because she understood now it was not about her capability, and never had been. Put her hand on his arm. Don't, she said softly. Stay beside me. He stayed beside her. The first creature stopped 8 feet away. In the two blue lights, she could see it clearly for the first time. The strange depth of its surface, which was not skin, and not armor, but something between the two. Something that recorded what it touched. Its attention, that quality of precise and absolute focus, was directed at her hand. At the place on her palm that had touched the sensor, it made no sound. Then it did something she hadn't seen any of them do. It stepped back. Just one step. Deliberate. Unmistakable. The others stopped where they were. The silence stretched. And then, from somewhere above, she couldn't tell if it was sound or pressure, or something that had no name in the physics she knew. A low tone moved through the street and the buildings and the cold air and into her chest. where it sat for a moment like a held note, and then resolved. Joan appeared in the pharmacy doorway behind them, wrapped in a blanket, staring. "Just happened," she whispered. Mara looked down at her hand. The palm was warm. The night around them was still. "I think they found their category," she said. They did not leave that night. The street remained closed. The cars remained dead. The sensors remained, most of them, active. The quality of the watching changed. She felt it, and Deon felt it, and even Joan, who was the most rigorously unsentimental person Mara had ever met, felt it. "It's like a lab," Joan said. At 3 a.m., the three of them on the roof, with the cistern in the city, that wasn't Detroit stretching dark in every direction. "More like I don't know, a conversation. We don't speak the same language," Deon said. "No," Mara agreed, "but we can hear each other now." She looked out at the street below. Two of the creatures stood at the corner, still, watching. But their posture had shifted. The deliberate, administrative quality was gone. There was something in the way they held themselves that she could only describe as attention of a different kind. Not the attention of a researcher logging data, but the attention of something that had encountered an unexpected result and did not yet know what to do with it. She understood that feeling. She'd felt it the first time she held her nephew, 3 days old, and realized that this small person had no knowledge of any world that had hurt anyone. She'd felt it the first time Deon had said, "I love you," quietly, without making a moment of it, just matter-of-factly, as if it were a thing that had simply become true and he was reporting it. She'd felt it standing outside her mother's hospital room, learning to breathe. The world was always full of things that didn't have a category yet. You made contact gently, and you paid attention to what happened. She looked at her palms, still faintly warm. "Get some sleep," she told Deon and Joan. "We've got work to do tomorrow." They did not ask her what she meant. They knew. In the morning, she would go back to the sensor. She would put her hand against it again, and she would feel for the frequency, and she would, slowly and carefully, and without any guarantee of outcome, try to answer back. She would do this the next day and the day after that. She would fail many times. She would learn from each failure the way you learn from a junction box that doesn't behave the way the textbook says. By starting over, by assuming nothing, by making contact with things very gently, and paying attention to what happens. She would not declare victory. She would not make speeches. She would sit across from the incomprehensible and refuse to stop being legible. And she would bring Deon's hand and Joan's stubbornness and the 8-year-old girl's intuition and her mother's breath into that space, and she would make them add up to something. Humans were very good at that, at adding up, at becoming, through sheer accumulated stubbornness, more than the sum of what anyone expected them to be. Below, in the too blue light, the creatures waited. She was not afraid.